Right, it is 7:01. I'd like to call this meeting of the Cold Spring Village Planning Board for December 3rd to order. The first item, I'll dispense with the chairman's remarks. The first order of business is approval of the minutes. You have before you a copy, the final draft of the minutes of our meeting of November 19th that is inclusive of Anna's comments. Everybody was emailed these over the holiday weekend. Hopefully you've had an opportunity. I received one or two responses with some minor corrections. But other than that, I'm assuming since I didn't hear from anybody, everybody is pretty well conversant with the minutes, being the third draft. And that being the case, are there any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes as filed.
Motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all right, good. Minutes are done. Good omen. Okay, report of staff and special committees. Essentially what you have before you now is Michael Ligori's last day is December 5th. So I've been kind of working with him to kind of push some of our open items out of the pipeline. What you were emailed over the weekend, and you have hard copies before you tonight, are the last drafts of our planning board information letter, which would accompany our application, as well as the FAQs, which would reside in the building inspector. With the building inspector, if you recall, these were the changes that we had agreed on at our joint meeting on October 29th with the HDRB and the Zoning Board of Appeals. They are still working on their comments to the FAQs, so the FAQs before us now represent our comments. All right, and Michael says he will have the updated version of our actual application to me by the end of the week. All right, there were some minor stylistic changes that Ann had suggested in terms of making it conform in a land use as opposed to planning app and so forth. So he will have that to me by the end of the week, and I'll of course forward that to the board. But this is just for your perusal, and then hopefully at our regular monthly meeting, if we're not of a mind to make any additional changes, we can adopt these FAQs, the instruction letter, and the actual application as our application packet going forward. Right? We can discuss it at length at that point, but I just wanted to make sure you had the most recent versions since it has been about 5 or 6 weeks. All right? That being the case, we can then move.
I have one question
Yeah,
about
certainly,
that
yeah.
also.
I'm sorry,
Just
any
on-
questions or comments? Go ahead, Jim.
Just on the last paragraph on the first page.
Which document now?
On welcoming to the villa, the application process,
Okay.
information.
Last paragraph on the first page. The
Okay.
application seeks,
Right.
Okay.
Down further, they're talking about if you are not the person that owns the property, they provide a letter authorizing you to make the application. Do we
Okay.
need to have that notarized?
I'll ask him about that and actually see what it says in the actual application,
Application.
because I think that might have been something that we included in the application.
Okay, well, being that he's speaking for someone,
Right.
they're speaking for another person,
Right,
that's
okay.
all.
Good, great, good catch.
Okay.
All right, if, again, look it over. If you have any questions or comments, when I get the updated application, I'll forward that, and then we can spend a little time reviewing this at our next meeting. Okay, case. Our next issue is correspondence. We have a couple of items here which I'll pass around. This is a letter from the New York Planning Federation with an invoice renewing our annual dues for $250. So if anybody'd like to look at it, Mary gave it to me today. And we just need to indicate that, yes, we want to continue to be members, the village to be members of the New York Planning Federation, and our dues is $250. And there's also a solicitation saying the annual conference is in April of 2015 at the Sagamore.
That looks so.
I'm sure we can take that under advisement and discuss that at a future date. We don't need to make any decisions now.
As an executive member of the NYPF board, I would strongly encourage everybody to attend that conference.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure
For
the
no
minutes-
other reason than the locale.
And the minutes will note your avuncular solicitation of the same. Yes.
There you go.
And then the other piece of correspondence that we have is some of us are attending PACE's annual land use conference at the law school on Friday. What has also been brought to our attention is I spoke with Tiffany Zarella, who's the director of the program, and they are also doing, they're trying to branch out and do some regional classes at no cost for local planning, zoning, and conservation, as well as HDRB boards. What they did send to me, and I'll forward it to you electronically, but it just came in, is there are 2 training sessions scheduled for Putnam on January 26th and February 9th at the county golf course. So these would apply for CE credits, and they're at no cost to board members. So those of you who aren't attending on Friday and still need to get CE credit, or if you're just a meeting junkie, feel free to sign up for this by the 15th. Here's the material as well as the course descriptions. All right. So I know, Arnie, you're away. That might be a good way for you to capture some CE credit. I'm sorry, there's multiple copies here. Okay. Next item, so I'm assuming, does anybody have an issue or a comment regarding our renewing our New York Planning Federation annual dues? Okay, may I have a motion that, to unanimously endorse that we will renew our New York Planning Federation dues?
I so move.
May I have a second? Thank you. Done. Our next piece of correspondence, since we're moving along, Anna sent to us this afternoon, there was a discussion, and are you prepared to speak to this now, or?
Sure.
Okay.
That's fine.
Anna forwarded to our attention a memo regarding how the subdivision review should occur in terms of the timeline and some of the procedural issues that we need to address. There are copies here, if, because it came in at 1 o'clock this afternoon. I'm not sure if everybody is aware of it and got a copy. But please, it's a mercifully brief memo, which I thank her for. And if you take the opportunity now to just, after reviewing the village code and New York state law,
Sure.
give us,
This is, might be a short memo, but merging these processes is rather complex. Basically, with regard to subdivision review, the planning board is guided by procedures in both the village law, which is state law, and the village code, that's your subdivision regulations. Unfortunately, the two don't match. So we need to kind of create a path to essentially follow both as best we can. Just one example, the village code does not require a public hearing for the preliminary plat. However, state law does. So, in the memo, I discuss having a public hearing for the preliminary plat. And also, when you look at the final plat approval, there is a village code requirement for a public hearing. So, there would be a second public hearing then for the final plat. So, it's complicated, but this starts to lay out the process. And what I could do also, when we get a little further along, is chart it out for everyone, if that would be helpful also. And also put in the site plan requirements also and see how all of them work together. But it's a complicated process, but it's doable. And just wanted to know if you have any questions. Yes.
In the first paragraph,
Yes.
You use the term backdrop. What does that mean? These procedures are applied against
Well,
the backdrop?
It's a little unusual here because there's a concept plan. It's essentially been adopted as part of the B4A amendments. That concept plan actually shows the subdivision. So basically, we're dealing with a situation where there is a subdivision shown on a plan for this property that's in the zoning code. That's really what it is. It doesn't change the procedures that you would follow.
But you're saying it, in the B4A, it's something that has already conceptually been,
Conceptually been subdivided, it's there, and actually the size, I believe, I could turn to it, but the size of the lots are even indicated, like the residential lots
Right.
Right.
are
Yeah.
indicated, so.
It's
so-
specific to the B4A.
Right, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to, they don't need subdivision approval, they do need subdivision approval.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
but do we know where, or if even, that the subdivision doesn't comply with the subdivision law? Have we,
that's, I'm laying out the procedures here.
okay,
When, under other requirements, that's a technical question, and that's one of the questions you raised last time, and I think that needs to be looked at, absolutely. The last, full, kind of large paragraph on the second page, general requirements and design standards are contained in Article 4 of the regulations, so that's where those are, so that's a technical matter, and that needs to absolutely be looked at. No question about it.
Okay, so, but to that point, until we have what we deem to be a complete site plan submission, then this would trigger the subdivision because it's tied to the B4A.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the big concerns is that under state law and under the village code as well, there's a default approval provision. So we need to keep aware of the clock here, so we avoid that. The time periods can be extended by mutual agreement of the applicant and the board, but we need to keep on top of that. So, until there's a complete submission, that clock doesn't start to run. And there's
until
not,
when?
the clock doesn't run until there's a complete submission.
Okay.
And right now, there's not a complete submission, so the clock has not
Right.
started to run.
But I guess a general question is, that I have, is the applicant designing the subdivision in accordance with chapter 111? Do we know that, or do we
That's a
not?
technical question.
Do we know if he's designing it in accordance? with-
Yeah, Arnie, that's something that we're looking at with this next submission that comes in. We'll run it through the 111 provisions.
Mhm.
And we'll make sure that, everything that they do is in compliance with that section. I brought it with me if we wanted to look at it, but, they have to comply with, all those
Your
provisions.
regulations.
Yeah, so we'll make sure.
See,
that
we
they-
asked Anna to generate this memo because of the conflict between, how B4A needed to be handled and what 111 says, as well as what village law states. So, once Chuck, from a technical perspective, says we have a complete submission, then, and only then, would we accept it, and then the clock would start running.
Right.
And then we would have to do
Subdivision.
these two public hearings
Right.
and sequence them properly.
And I also, if the applicant's gonna be here tonight, I would also wanna confirm that with them, that that's their understanding, because I'd like that on the record. That
Okay.
they understand that we don't have a complete submission, and the clock hasn't started.
Okay.
Yeah, the village's subdivision regulations are a little different than what you would typically see, for a lot of communities. And it just they've been ignored maybe for a number of years, or you haven't really had a chance to really run through, a lot of subdivision procedures over the last, dozen or so years. There's a concern that, state law says 62 days for your time frame, village law says 45 days. We wanna make sure that we're not superseding or, pushing beyond any of those limitations and making sure it's done correctly, so.
Okay, all right, well, that's just like, at least we're on notice now in terms of how we need to proceed with that.
And again, if you'd like me to prepare, a chart.
Oh, absolutely.
I can do that.
Once Chuck is in a position to give you the information to plug in, so then we know what the time, because I'd like to have that chart with actual dates
Right.
in it, so it's not an esoteric
Yep.
issue, so we know
Right.
exactly what
Right.
we're looking at in terms of scheduling.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, anything else? Or,
That's all, if anyone has any questions now or later, that's fine, just.
is everybody clear on, what we're apprised of and how we need to proceed? Okay. Chuck, I think that's an excellent segue into you.
All right, we'll give you just kind of a quick update. if you guys remember from last meeting, the applicants had kind of a laundry list of things to look at. We had a 16-page comment letter that, they were to look at and kind of go through and assess and revise their plans accordingly. I spoke with Matt Moran and his engineer Joe Renham yesterday. We were expecting a full set of revised plans to come in, either late today, and they may have. I was out of the office this afternoon, from their engineer with all the revisions in them. And with the letter, those revisions accompanied by a kind of a full letter that responds to every one of our comments. I haven't seen it yet. It's my understanding that they're preparing it. It's my hope that it'll be on my desk when I get up there tomorrow. If that's the case, then what we'll do is we'll certainly review that. We'll prepare another memo for the board for the meeting on the 17th, and we'll come down and we'll present that. I've also asked the applicants, now that they're advancing their designs a little bit more, is to come in with their consultants, their architect, their engineers, their landscape architect, to give the board more of a formal presentation and literally walk you through their plans and explain to you all the different segments. Explain to you the building layouts, the parking layouts, their landscaping ideas, have their engineers talk about their sewer and water systems, their stormwater management systems, a more formal presentation of really what, how things are kind of being designed and shaped out, so you really understand how all the moving parts come together for the project. I think that'll be very helpful to kind of see how it all, works together, and then we can certainly formulate more questions based on that, but.
Well, yeah, because their last submission, they basically had an add-on for the lighting and the landscaping
Correct.
plans.
Right.
So that really needs to be fleshed out in terms of a census, what they're thinking, what their calculations are,
Yeah,
and so
there's-
forth.
Unfortunately, and we kind of anticipated that they would be kind of coming in bits and pieces with things because of the, their kind of rush schedule, so. I'm assuming they'll have everything that we want to see, for this next meeting. But,
And then the format, is just to recall, because we had agreed that the format, the actual technical memo from the
Mhm.
13th, their answers to your responses are gonna be embedded within the flow of that
Yeah.
memo, so we're not hunting around,
Exactly.
trying to match up what goes with what.
Correct. We provided them with a Word version of our letter, and we asked them to literally cut and paste our comments out with their responses. Responses such as addressed, we don't like to see. Describe what you did, how you addressed it, and where it is in your plans. So, they're clear on that, so. My expectation is that they'll have very detailed, comments based on our comments. And so far, based on, preliminary discussions with them, I've gotten no pushback on any of the issues we've asked for clarification, so my sense is that they're okay with.
Since we have some time now, why don't you pull out the plans and just walk us through, because you said you had that 3 or 4 hour meeting with them, so
Yeah.
if you could just kind of give us a synopsis of what actually transpired.
Chuck, do you have the updated lighting plan?
It might be in there, Ernie, if you wanna just grab those cups.
Because I had some concerns about that area.
Just don't wanna lose your glasses under here. I think it's in your size.
Good, I didn't want to say anything out loud.
Into
Yep.
the 17th.
Okay, cool.
Sheet L401. It's gonna be, they're all kind of out of order. Kind of grabbed the plans that I was running out the door.
I have my set, but it's not gonna have your
Yeah,
notations, is that?
Take a look and see if you, in that corner, see if you can find sheet L104. That was the lighting plan.
Mm-hmm. It's not in mine.
May not be in
Is
this.
that in this one? Got it.
Got it.
Oh, good. Yeah, we'll just roll it back, sorry. And this one doesn't show the photometrics, so.
I was concerned about lighting that's along 9D here,
Yeah, they,
in front of the building.
on the
here.
photometric plot that they showed, they showed kind of where all the fixtures were gonna be and then the light spill over in lumens.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't show it on this plan, but you're right, Jim.
Okay, there, this area, but
Yeah.
there isn't much lighting on this side of 9D.
Right,
Also, they have this area over here, they have benches to sit at,
yep.
there's no lighting. There's nothing here in this area for them
So you'd be looking for maybe more enhanced lighting on 9D?
on 9D.
Or at least the calculations of the lumens, like,
Right.
superimposing
See where it is.
where it actually,
Right.
with the
the
throw area is.
Optometry that they have.
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
lighting already along 9D?
There isn't much there.
Not along,
And not along this side, there's a pole down opposite the
there,
driveway.
there's the pole right
Yeah,
there.
well, there's one original one there.
Yeah,
There's one across the street.
Yeah.
So, but they're showing this area here, it's gonna be a sitting area,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing there.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jim. The concern is, along 9D,
Mhm.
spill over into the road isn't really a critical issue, I
No,
think,
no,
for you
it's
guys.
just sidewalk,
It's where it meets, the residential uses is where we
Right.
wanna be
but
sensitive.
then you have nothing here. This is all sidewalk area, there's
Mhm.
nothing in this area.
Mhm.
And that's gonna be a walk down from Pole.
And the thing is here, presumably most people will be using it in the day, but it becomes an attractive nuisance at night,
but at the same
correct?
time, you
If
want
it's
some
not-
kind of downdraft lighting here,
Yes,
so
exactly,
Mhm.
so
Right.
that there is no,
If it's benches, there's gonna be
it
benches
it
here.
Yeah,
doesn't cause like
exactly.
any after-hours congregation or,
Mhm.
Well, they did that
Right.
here for seniors, the seniors
Right.
gonna be over here.
It's kind of being a little patio.
Right,
Yeah.
right. This is ends up being a swale back there, so people won't, but that whole sidewalk has nothing.
and then 6 is a residential building in any case, so you're gonna wanna have some kind of,
Mm-hmm.
Right, so
exactly.
I mean,
Yeah, cause I know on the lighting plan that we have, there's wall packs that
Mhm.
basically encircle most of these
Oh,
buildings.
you're showing wall packs on?
They've got some, yeah.
Okay.
But,
yeah, but still, we're gonna need
there's
spillover.
dark spots.
Yeah, and 90 is not lit very well at all. as it
Especially
is
when
right
it's
now.
coordinated with the landscaping
There's
plan.
about 3 lights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I just wanted to go over that, and we can get that coverage on there.
Certainly.
All right, why don't you just give us a brief overview of your comments?
Yeah, let's just kind of roll that back. Essentially, again, if you remember, what we were looking for is we had some serious concerns about the grading, along Butterfield Road. The elevations climb pretty steeply back through this area, once you get past,
Right.
close to Leahy, and especially back up through here. So they're gonna be looking at some of that. We had some utility questions as well, overburden for the existing water main that's out here, as well as some other issues, so they're gonna address that.
And then there was the issue of the retaining wall, the
Mhm.
setback for,
Right.
Yep, we're gonna be looking at probably some easements. They are gonna
Right.
approach these property owners for some limited work easements, to be
For
able
the
to
wall.
drop this retaining wall in here,
Mhm.
because they're close to the line. I mean, they can get in pretty close with their, construction equipment, but there's still gonna be some disturbance in there.
Right.
And we wanna make sure that it doesn't impact those trees. So we've asked them to, add on this survey, some of the existing vegetation conditions back here, show the trees,
Yeah,
show
there's
the
no
locations.
trees here.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
this whole
and
back
and we don't
area.
see it on this plan, so, they're gonna do some of that as well. We also wanted to see, the locations of some of those other trees that are down in this area, that are potentially being impacted. The big concerns really were mostly grading, off that backside, and then reconfiguring the parking was an issue,
Right.
that we had talked about.
Also, the handicap parking. we
Yeah,
spoke
they're
about.
gonna be relocating a lot of
Relocating that.
this closer into the buildings. I'm not quite sure where they're gonna put it yet.
yeah, because there were the dumpster enclosures, the
Yep.
handicap parking, and then the total amount of available parking was an issue too.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things we discussed is, again, if building 2 goes, for some sort of municipal use, they wanna maximize parking around that building.
Mhm.
But the thought was, maybe up in this area, they don't need as much parking, so instead of using perpendicular parking here, they go to maybe some sort of parallel parking, where they pull those spaces, further this way off the property line, and then put in,
And we could
landscaping.
get some median,
Yeah, you can put in some sort of landscaping in there to further buffer, the residential properties off to the north, so, or the west.
As far as the parking, I just had a question. See this island that they have here?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's, to me, that creates an obstacle for getting it.
It could, I mean,
You have people parking here, and they're trying to get around.
is it just a
it's a,
aesthetic thing, or is it
I think
traffic
it
calming, what
created
it,
a
yeah,
parking spot for them.
it's kind of a design element to create this curve,
right?
where you don't have any obstructions, but it's something I can certainly look at.
Just to me, it seems to be causing obstruction.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
because if you
Find
look
out
at,
the reasoning.
yeah, because I mean, once we start to look at how they've engineered the traffic flow through there, that's an issue. I mean, I've seen that in the past. I'm assuming they did that there to intentionally create a break, at that intersection.
Usually that's what they're designed to do, is just to create some
Yeah,
sort of
right.
formal entryway, like into this driveway, where this
Right,
driveway
right.
meets this access road.
I just see it as an obstacle.
As a curve, yeah, formalize the curve. You don't want somebody kind of backing out of the parking.
Or at the very
space.
least, the light standard that's there, I mean, have it positioned in
Mhm.
such a way that they're not replacing it every year. Somebody's backing into it or running
Right.
over it or something.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, that could potentially be a problem for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head, there's so many different things.
But nothing really, I mean, in terms of the list that we gave you, there was nothing that they took exception to.
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't get pushed back on any of the design issues, any of the stormwater management, issues. We asked them for some enhanced calculations.
Mhm.
We wanna run that through our modeling, but until we see their new information, we can't do that, so.
And is that something you're expecting for the 17th, or
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
next? Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, again, it's dependent on what the applicants can give us. What we
Now,
see.
when they do supply the landscaping plan, have the landscaping plan incorporate the legacy trees or the mature trees
Yeah.
that are staying?
Yeah.
So we see how
Yeah, we asked for that.
the interplay
Yep.
is on that.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
We're just getting a report that you had a very good preliminary meeting with the staff engineers and planners as far as some of our questions from our last meeting. And we're hopeful that there is a complete enough submission that we'll be able to make some progress on the 17th.
There too.
yep, so, again, we're just kind of in a hold pattern until the next submission comes in.
Anna, since Mr. Barshoff is here now, you had an issue or something you indicated you might want to revisit something with subdivision? Or at least get,
Yeah, there's a memo, that was drafted with regard to subdivision review procedures incorporating the village law and the village code.
okay.
And, the trigger for the clock, for the village law, and really for the village code, too, the village law is submission of a complete preliminary plat. So, we just wanted to confirm that it's not complete at this point.
Okay.
Okay, so the clock hasn't started to run,
tick, yeah.
okay?
Okay,
You're
sure.
in agreement on that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, that's a determination really for you guys
Right.
about completeness,
Okay.
so we'll defer to you on
Okay.
that.
Okay, that was good.
Chuck, when you get back, and I know this is, on a wing and a prayer at this point, when you get back and see if indeed you have what you need for the next submission on the 17th, look it over, and if you could indicate to us what you think, since we're trying to plug in terms of subdivision, what our probable timelines are, or
Yep.
how many iterations, or what you
certainly
see
do
is
that.
missing, or what questions has this latest submission raised?
Yep,
Because
we'll
we're gonna need
certainly
to address the 111 issues.
Yeah.
So the sooner we can get to that, assuming you have the information you need.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep, not a problem.
Any comments or questions so far? All right. Well, I see a fellow chair has walked in. We have our friends of the HDRB have requested to meet with us jointly to make us aware of some issues or concerns that they have from their perspective as the historic board with the site plan. So with that being said, very informal process here. So Al, if whomever of your board is present, if you'd like to bring up a chair or join us, or we have your memo.
Okay.
Which, does everybody have a copy of the HDRB? Anna? Ann, do you have one as well? Chuck, would you?
Yes, I have one, thank you. She just needs one, that's all. Okay.
Alright, everybody comfortable? I know we should all know this and everything, but for the benefit of maybe the one or two of us who don't, could we just go around the table and introduce ourselves? I'm Barney Malloy.
I'm done.
Arnie, sorry.
Chuck Voss with B&L.
Kathleen Foley.
Pete Downey. Al Skalinski.
Carolyn Basham.
Evan Pellizzeri.
And Carol. And Anna Giorgio with McCarthy.
Jim Brigado.
All right, as I said, more for the record at this point, this was at the request of the HDRB to make us aware of their parallel review regarding the Butterfield redevelopment application and some issues or concerns that they have identified that they want to bring to our attention. So with that, we have a memo from them, which we have all read, and I'll turn it over to Al to take us through.
Well, basically, we know that you're working on the site plan, and what we would like to address are some site plan issues that we would like to see changed from the plan that at least we saw that was submitted to us during our review. First is orientation of building number 2. Yeah, which is right over here. What we would like to do is, since the way we see it, buildings 1 and 2 kind of go along with the Leahy Pavilion, that it be aligned to with Leahy Pavilion to look like it's all one assembly. So we're looking at the orientation of that building. And the second is that typically along this, Chestnut Street, the typical configuration for the buildings on that street is a deeper setback. And so we were concerned that the fact that the buildings were so close to the property line are not in conformance with what we normally see as far as the other properties in the area. So we're looking to move buildings 1 and 2 further away from the property line.
Okay. Do you have any other than any specific suggestion or recommendation or I mean, I don't know where your conversations are with the applicant. I mean, we can invite the applicant to opine as well.
This is a conversation for the board, it's time, right?
I understand it's a conversation with the board. I'm just asking, I mean, if other members of your,
Well, I guess the first question I have is that, is there any problem with making that change to the site plan? The first thing, let's take them one at a time, orientation of building number 2.
Are you talking about orientating this at a greater angle than is permitted under B4A?
Well, I don't know, I mean, I haven't really measured it, but I know that we can change the orientation. All we want to do is make it parallel with the Lady Pavilion.
I mean,
No,
it
not
sounds
parallel
like
with
common
Lady.
sense
Yeah.
approach, but
okay, one at a time, please.
Well, why don't you go ahead and finish your saying?
I mean, it sounds like a common sense architectural approach to, to put the orientation of the buildings along the same line, but we ran into difficulty when we tried to address the issue of mass and scale. It seems like to me that this falls into the same bailiwick.
Well, there is flexibility within the B4A that allows some adjustment, and we feel,
15 degrees, I think.
and
Are
10 feet.
you okay with
and
any?
Excuse me,
One at
that
a time.
increases to 25 feet and 15 degrees respectively with aesthetic considerations. So we actually feel as if the B4A allows sufficient flexibility to make adjustments which would make a difference in terms of character on this parcel as it relates to the district around. Those adjusting measurements were allotted so that there would be some flexibility for shift.
So you're staying within the restrictions of B4A when it
We
comes to it?
haven't talked yet about feet or angles. We're coming to you initially before we, what we don't want to do is bounce the applicant back and forth between the boards. We're coming to you and saying, here is an issue that we see when we examine the character of this portion of the historic district and recognize that the setbacks in this portion of the village, both within the mid-20th century stock there are deeper, but also the historic properties in this portion of the village also have deeper setbacks. When we look, our charge is to look at new construction in relation to the character of the property itself and the surrounding properties. So we're looking at those properties and saying, this portion of the village is characterized by deeper setbacks. What can we do to accomplish a deeper setback on this site that would bring this site plan into greater conformity with the character of this portion of the district? And so as we read the B4A and see that we need to achieve substantial conformity, but buildings cannot be moved more than 15 feet in any direction, and the orientation of the individual buildings cannot vary more than 10 degrees. These numbers may be increased to 25 feet and 10 degrees respectively to accommodate aesthetic considerations. That gives us some leeway. And so we're coming to you to say, can we accomplish some shift that brings the parcel into better conformity with that portion of the district, the character of that portion of the district?
Can I ask a question? In doing all this, did you come up with a rough sketch of what you'd like?
That's, the applicant needs to.
Well, but,
Yeah, I mean, you know, as far as the orientation goes, you know, to me, it's a relatively simple thing, you know, it's a question of figuring out, what is this angle and, what is that angle, and what's the difference between the two? And would you happen to know what that is?
No, off the top of our head, no, but we can certainly look at it. So you're talking like taking building 2 and slightly shifting it to kind of be parallel with like.
parallel
To
to that, this angle, this line?
No, I'm sorry, that's incorrect, parallel to 9D, not to Lake.
Put it simply, we're
Because
looking
right
for
now
a
they are
streetscape coming into town,
Oh,
where the
not
buildings are
quite.
set
Slide
back
the
a
building.
little, and so they match everything else as
You
you
wanna
get
stand
through.
up and show them your hand?
Yeah, that-
Could have been building parallel with 90.
It'll probably exceed the limitations in the code, but we could certainly have the applicant look at it.
Alright, Peter, did you have anything?
Like I just said, we're looking more for a streetscape. As you come into town, we want the buildings to be set back a little, like the rest of the buildings that are in that area. And just so you come around, the buildings are aligned with 90.
So to
And
the,
that's the easiest
so
way
to
to
the
put it.
extent that the zoning ordinance permits the buildings to be set back and parallel to the street, the existing streetscape is
With
what
the,
you're looking for.
with the built-in consideration for aesthetics. One of the things that we talked about, and again, no studies have been done to know if this is feasible, one of the things we talked about with building 1 was the possibility of flipping building and parking. There is quite a lot of front lot parking in that portion of the village. That may buy the illusion of a deeper setback. The other thing that we spend a lot of time thinking about is, unfortunately, Mr. Galero's hands are tied with Leahy, and the worst building remains, right? So we have this building, we have these beautiful buildings. His architect has done such a fine job. We've been very pleased with the designs that are coming back, designing beautiful buildings around, you know, this sort of mediocre building. And so how do you somehow incorporate, make an attempt to incorporate this building so that it feels more comfortable on the site, it sits more comfortably within this newer architecture, and doesn't, right now it's sort of hanging out there in an odd way. And so perhaps the reorientation of 2 could help soften the blow of that remaining sort of sore thumb in the center of the site.
Well, and just, I guess the thing that I would like to do is kind of work out a process that we can, you know, work with these adjustments, because up to this point, rightfully so, Matt basically said, you know, we're sort of locked into this plan. And we just wanted to make sure that before the site plan process got too far, that our concerns were addressed as far as the site plan, because as Kathleen said, we don't want to bounce them back and forth. So that's basically what we're looking to do, is that within the context of the ordinance, make the adjustments as much as possible so that it does in fact reflect the character of the neighborhood.
There's one other thing I'd like to mention, before most of the fellow members of the HDRB got here, Anna had a very interesting discussion regarding timeframes for the adoption of the site plan of the plat. And since there has been no complete site plan that's been submitted yet, and we don't know when that will happen. And we don't know what the timeframes are within that, so we'll have to try to work within comparable timeframes to achieve that. And if she could, explain for the benefit of my members of how that works.
Anna, why don't you just briefly,
Sure, I have some copies of the memo.
and what, yeah, and for the members of the audience who are here as well too, as is our practice, all the documentation, all the memoranda and whatever will be available on the planning board's webpage within 48 hours. So this memo that Anna is discussing tonight, that she's made available to us tonight, will be on the website within the next day or so. So with that, Anna, just,
Could you clarify the question? I just wanna make sure I get it.
Well, you mentioned that there is a time frame in, I believe, state village law.
State village law.
Right.
And the village code.
And the village code, between the time a complete site plan is deemed.
This is subdivision.
Subdivision, okay. Complete subdivision is presented to the planning board, and the planning board deems it complete.
Right.
And then there's a time frame in which they must approve a plat. So if you could just describe that briefly.
This is for subdivision, and there's a similar time frame for site plan as well, but it's 62 days from the submission of a complete plat that a public hearing needs to be held, and then 62 days after the public hearing for the decision. That's basically the window, okay, for subdivision. That's under village law. There's a different time frame under the village code. It's a shorter time frame, but village law applies as well. So we'd be following the village law as far as the longer time frame, the 62 days maximum.
The 62 plus 62.
Yes, that's the maximum.
that being the case, what you just brought up in terms of what you would like to see, or in terms of the orientation and the issue of parking and setback and so forth, is that conversation memorialized in your minutes at any place?
No,
Or?
we haven't had that conversation because, Matt had said that, basically the site plan is being developed, with the planning board, and so that's why we asked for the meeting with the planning
Right.
board, was really to be able to, meet with you and give us the flexibility to make whatever changes as far as locations and orientation that we can do. I mean, I
Well,
don't,
to clarify, in our last session, our last workshop session, which Matt attended, and I don't remember if we got that far in the first one, but in the second session, we did raise these issues, we talked about them, and we agreed in that session that our next step would be to produce this memo for you, which we have done. So yes, the issue has been raised. Those minutes, the next time that we can vote on minutes is next Wednesday, so those minutes are drafted and they will be voted on and posted next week. So yes, they are memorialized in our minutes. These issues also, however, are memorialized in our comments on the EAF. We raised this issue at the EAF review stage, the question of setbacks in this portion of the district, and we raised it again at the draft B4A review.
Yes,
So
but-
there are two,
but tonight-
I'm letting you know that all of you asked the question, where is it memorialized? I'm answering the question. It's memorialized in the EAF our EAF comments, our draft B4A comments, and it will be memorialized in the minutes of our last workshop session.
My question was the specific technical in terms of the amount of setback you're looking, the parallel, the orientation, all that.
And we have
Okay.
not got
We
a
haven't
specific
done it.
number yet. We've
That's-
just raised the concept.
That was my
Okay.
question.
okay.
I mean, do we have something to quantify
Well,
the scope of the change that you would like to see investigated?
all right, and, well, I guess my question is that, it didn't make very much sense to get into a lot of specific detail if, this was a non-starter to begin with, and that's why we wanted to have the joint meeting.
Gotcha.
We wanna make sure that we're all on the same page, and that, we're not bouncing the applicant between boards, in the process. And so, if your board has no objection, and as long as we stay within the limits of the ordinance, next week we're meeting, right? We're gonna be meeting with the applicant. We'll be more than happy to get into those issues with them.
And again, and the rest of the board, feel free to opine, my take on this would be that if, again, the specifics in terms of how you would like to see an alternative laid out, right? I think that needs to be evaluated from a technical perspective. That's where I was coming from. Whether it can be done or not, whether it's cost effective, whether it doesn't cause the envelope to, impact in ways that we would not appreciate or are gonna cause problems maybe with the subdivision of the individual lots or landscaping or whatever. We need to know the scope of what ideally you would like to see, so then a technical evaluation can be undertaken.
Well, there are just two things that we're dealing with. One is the orientation of buildings basically building 2, and then the setbacks of building 1 and 2. Those are the two things that we're looking at.
From that perspective then, Chuck, based on the timeline that you indicated to us earlier, is this something that you can at least start to take a look at in terms of feasibility or what the potential impacts or trade-offs might be?
Well, what I would do, and I think, you hit on it, is I would ask the applicant to show us a design,
Okay.
based on the comments they're hearing, for reorienting building 2, in that parallel kind of configuration with the roadway with 9D, and maximizing as best as they can a setback for that, and then, looking at the concept of maybe sliding building 1 further in, maybe losing a row of parking behind, or, moving that parking out front, and kind of showing us, in kind of, plan view, what that's gonna look like. What that will do is that will also, now that they're doing some of their advanced engineering, is that will give us an indication about impacts to grading, impacts to stormwater management systems, impacts to the surface parking areas. For instance, the parking lot underneath Butterfield Court
Is the detention pond.
is a pretty significant stormwater management system under there. If they need to shift everything and slide it, can that feasibly be done without creating further impact? So we'll let them show us.
Okay.
We'll ask them for that information.
But you feel at this point you have sufficient detail to,
Mhm.
okay, great. That being the case, Ann?
There are some ideas, concepts being posed here, and I think a number of us would be interested in seeing what happens with the reorientation with regard to 9D. I'm not sure that I share the concept that parking between the road and the structure is a plus. But that's a question of the feel about the village. I understand what you're saying about other places, but
Especially that portion of the village, yeah.
But from my sense, having cars be so dominant could be a problem, put on the record.
What, just again to be clear, what we're doing now is we're gonna see from a technical perspective is if this is even a serviceable alternative, right? Then, if that is indeed the case, then we can get into the more prosaic issues at some future point, okay?
Yeah, I'll work with Matt and Joe, his engineer, to kind of start looking at those reorientation issues. And we'll have to look at some of those designs and see if you're gonna significantly alter the concept plan. If the concept plan is altered in a significant way, it's probably not gonna be a feasible alternative, but let's see. Let's tweak with those numbers and see, what that building looks like. If we can slide that building, using those parameters of the B4A code and reorient it so that it fits, and you're not losing significant pieces,
Okay.
that's probably a good idea, so.
Any other board members, any comments at this point? Arnie?
I support both ideas, providing it doesn't create, other problems, and I'm sure you probably would agree with that. But,
Yeah, I think it's something that we would all want to take a look at and see if an alternative is possible and what impact that potential alternative might have.
Just to clarify, because and this is just a disagreement between me and Carolyn, I do think that I would, building number 2, aligning it with the orientation of Lady Pavilion, to me is a more, is a better approach.
So can you take your hand and put it on the building and shift it and describe what you mean? So it's
It would shift from there to there.
so it's a
And, you know, again, some,
so for
maybe.
Parallel related.
your
Yeah.
version of it is a lesser turn than Carolyn's.
Right, well, that and also,
What you can do with the actual.
yeah, and ultimately, I think that's, you know, that's the options that we need to
Yeah.
explore.
Well, yeah, let the also record show though too, it very well may be when Chuck goes through this from a technical perspective, there might be some, you know, variation between
Right.
what Carolyn is suggesting and what you're
Understood,
suggesting,
understood,
you know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
so.
But it might come in closer to what you're thinking,
Right.
you know, in terms of those aesthetics.
So let's see what the consequences are and if we can accommodate this, and then we can decide what our next step is once we have some of the technical information.
Okay.
Have you all seen elevations yet?
No,
I think you'll be excited by what you see. There's some really good design coming.
well, we try and not, you know, go outside our bailiwick.
Well, I think
They're gonna be in the next
compliment. Your
submission.
I know,
architect has done a
we're-
really fine job.
We're gonna get the whole package
You'll see
in
it
our
in
next
2
submission.
weeks.
We're gonna have the landscape plan, the architect's coming, so we'll curb our enthusiasm till that point.
Just a question for the applicant, do you think that you may have some of these studies as far as the setback and the orientation for the next meeting, for next week?
Well, I'd like to go over some constraints right now, if I can do that.
Okay,
Okay.
let's, one second.
Okay.
Any other board comments? Mr. Galero? And remember, in the spirit of camaraderie and
Yes.
goodwill here, let's,
So, the Leahy Pavilion, which Hudson Valley Hospital has a ground lease on, these are the lines that is their ground lease, okay? So, that can't be encroached on, right? It just, that's one constraint. This line here, I can't touch, I can't go into that area.
What does the shadow represent? Your proposed parking?
Oh, that's
Or the existing parking?
Existing. As far as this existing building goes, in rotating it, I think what Al says could be possible, but one of the big things when we were going through this whole process is they wanted a Butterfield square. They wanted a square, an area for people to meet. And with the 2 big trees that we have out front, if you start rotating this building in this direction, it's gonna cut down that square to just a very small area between the building and the trees. So that's just one of the constraints I wanted to point out. Okay, it's not that we're not willing to rotate the building or whatever, but we think we've got it in a position now that is optimal, but, you know.
how about this, rather than go point counterpoint, because that's not where we are
Yeah.
tonight. When Chuck and your engineers go through the analysis, an exhaustive list of constraints, trade-offs, or whatever, what's possible and what's not possible. We might not even, you know, in reorienting the detention ponds, we don't know. So I think that would be more helpful and better addressed as part of the analysis. I mean, because we don't want to take anything off the table at this point, and we don't want to give anything outsized consideration until we see what the whole envelope looks like. Okay?
Yeah, but that was very interesting, knowing what,
Right.
about the ground
That
lease.
board, yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's huge.
Well, and that's something that I've been wondering about for a long time, is what the meets and bounds are of that
Yes.
lease. I think this is probably the first time we're seeing that.
Is this in essence another lot then? Would it be
No.
lot 5?
No, it's just, it's a ground lease, so it's an area that's, they have rights to that, but it's not a subdivision or a lot line.
There's no waivers pertaining to that at all for you to do.
No.
Well, you'll incorporate that all into the analysis when your engineer gets together with B&L, and we'll have a complete list of considerations and, you know, where we need to go from that point.
I still got a question. Does that mean that within this boundary, you're not allowed to change stuff? Or is that, I'm
No,
not sure exactly what.
No, we could change things, but we can't put a building in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you can put parking and
Yeah.
Parking surface.
stuff like that.
Sure.
Right. Okay. All right, any other questions or comments?
Actually, could I come back to something that Mr. Pagano just said? You just said surface.
Surface
Does
area.
that, could, and I don't remember the details of the exact location of retention, the detention basin there. If detention basin obviously is gonna go subsurface. Does the boundary prohibit subsurface? Is it only surface that you can't?
No, but we're retaining their water, the water that's on the lot there. You know, a lot of it is just that area, so it's for that lot. You know, it's for the area, not the easement area that they're in.
It's in front of the building right now, right?
Yeah, right here.
I'm sorry.
Matter of fact, this area here is a stormwater management area, but what that is for our irrigation system.
How does it, on this one, relate, here it looks like it's next to the square. On the larger site plan, the retention area?
No, turn that around.
No.
It's like that.
Oh, yes, but it still looks as if it's in the square.
No,
No.
what's in the square? No, that's a bioretention basin, that's down here.
Followed by in between.
Yeah, no, we're talking about up here, that's the easement area.
There's
here.
another,
Okay.
there's
So it's in
subsurface
here.
under the parking lot.
So I was confusing the bioretention area for
With the stormwater.
With
detention.
stormwater.
Stormwater.
So where does the stormwater bit happen? Here.
In the middle.
Right here, this dotted line.
So you already have a subsurface something there.
Yes.
Got it. I'm sorry.
Would it be possible for B&L to attend the meeting next week if the applicant has?
Just so we're clear, I mean, I guess, you know, this has been pretty much a planning board managed project for the last 15 months or so. B&L and Anna Giorgio have been retained by the village at Mr. Galero's expense to shepherd the process through any of the respective boards as needed. So you're, by all means, they're available. I mean, it doesn't require any
Okay.
input from us.
Yeah, I'll check calendars.
Okay.
When's that next meeting?
Next, a week from today.
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. It'll probably be after 8 o'clock because we have an agenda that we go through and then we'll go to the workshop.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll just double check my calendar.
It'll be
Okay.
later than 8 because we start at 8. So
Yeah.
So
you
it's
can check
at
with
some
Mary.
point then,
You can
okay.
check with Mary on the order of the agenda.
Okay, so we're clear on what our next steps are? Yes, we wouldn't be a meeting without Mr. Parshaw.
I just wanted to thank you sincerely for bringing these issues up now and bringing them up to the planning board. At this stage, I think that the chair's point of not wanting to have this bounced back and forth is frankly a huge relief to me. Because these are the kinds of things, the biggest nightmare from our end is, you know, you go through this whole process with planning board, and then you end up before the HDRB, and now we're put in a position of saying, but our hands are tied. And then that doesn't go over very well with the HDRB. So the idea that these are coming up now and are gonna go through the kind of technical analysis and review, which by the way is critically important because HDRB doesn't also want to hear from us to say, but we can't do it for this reason, we can't do it for that reason. Now you're gonna have a planning board looking at this. And I think it's going to make the entire process go a lot smoother, and for that, I'm very appreciative.
Any other comments from board members?
Yes, I'd like to point out, though, that this might not be the only joint meeting we have. We may have other joint meetings in the future. And, you know, hopefully to move this process along as expeditiously as possible and not doing ping pong with the applicant.
That'd be great.
And if we can facilitate that in any way, you know, we will, because the idea of getting this, in my words, one-stop shopping will be great. So we will try to deal with all of these issues in one shot, make sure that it's all in front of everyone, and come up with the best plan that we can.
Well, really, it's also helpful to us because if we're not all in session, then we're getting information from minutes or hearsay, and it's, you know, it's like telephone. It's much better if we're all in the same room.
Couldn't agree more.
Terrific.
Would it be desirable, and I have no idea of calendar, but if some of us could attend your meeting next week?
It's
You're always
it's
welcome,
always
man.
It's a public meeting.
You're all welcome.
Public
Let's
meeting.
do whatever you want.
Anybody is
Please,
welcome to
accompany.
attend at any point.
Okay.
We could start to sing Kumbaya.
All right, since everybody's smiling, I think we should adjourn. Thank you, guys.
Thank
See you soon.
Very much. So we're gonna go to the little room.
Yeah.
Let's just say thanks.
Well, they had two doors.
Yep.
All right, good. Anna, did you have any additional comments? Chuck, you've got a lot on your plate now?
Yeah, no, I think it's, you know, it's certainly worthwhile to take a look at that orientation and see what can be done. you
Most
know, so-
expeditious, good.
Mhm. I'll double check, on our availability for next Wednesday as well. I don't have my calendar, I apologize, so.
Good, no problem. That being said, any other questions or comments from board members on what we've discussed this morning? Well, we've come to that portion of our meeting where we invite public comment about anything that is an agenda item or that anything that has been discussed at this meeting by board members this evening. We ask that if you do make public comment, you identify yourself for the record and bear in mind that your comments reflect what has been discussed here this evening. With that said, is there anybody who would like to make any public comment?
Can I-
Wow.
Is this,
So
are you
close.
closing, are you going into a workshop, or what are you doing?
No, we're, when we get to public comment,
We're done.
we're done.
Okay, so I thought that we had our landscape architect come in to talk to you about his plan. I thought that we were doing
Oh.
that this evening. Are we not?
Well, the discussion I had with Matt was full presentation on the 17th by your design team.
Because we don't have,
Yeah.
we don't have any updated information before us tonight.
Yeah,
We haven't had an opportunity to
Yeah.
review it, so.
Yeah, that was the discussion we had, so. You know, then we can walk the board through all those elements, the enhanced landscaping that we had talked about last time, you know, the stormwater management systems, you know, that good stuff, so.
Yeah, Chuck's pretty stern about that
For the
stuff.
17th, yeah, it was the 17th, so.
All right.
Okay, great. That being said, again, any public comment? Wonderful, oh my. Let the record show, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? It is 8:03 PM.
I'm shocked. I get home before 5.
Right.
Nice.